for this webinar. And here, the things that we aim to focus on today. Then here are some thoughts about the second part there after the setting the stage. So we believe that there are several reasons to use tools, and to increase quality is definitely one of the reasons. To increase quality and usefulness. And how can we do that? Well, by decreasing the number of errors. Tools may help us to avoid errors, and tools may help us to improve our resilience as well. Another reason for using tools can be to decrease effort and to decrease stress as well by increasing productivity. Using tools can help us to increase our productivity and therefore reducing stress as well. Something that Kurt will elaborate on a little later is what he told me when we prepared about for this webinar, Toyota's Karakuri principle. And it is about using different things to simplify your working environment, like magnetic force, balance, and other things. And we will hear more about that later on. So that's a way of decreasing stress and effort by leverage. Then it's easier to lift something, for example. So we are also talking about easing not only physical, but mental stress as well. And then if we expand it a little, it's quite possible to use tools in order to stimulate creativity and thinking. And you can use supporting hints. You can use Kaizen AI. That's AI in order to help us remember things. And did you remember to check this? Maybe one simple thing could be when I leave my house, instead of being obsessive if I turn the oven off or left ironing thing on or left the fridge door open, maybe we can have some AI that helps us with the green light, means that all of those things that I want to check are checked automatically. And then another thing where you can use tools is to promote collaboration. And you can do that by visualizing what you're supposed to do, what you are doing, and what you are done doing also, using story maps, roadmaps, etc. And also promote collaboration using tools to help build a common understanding of what we are building and producing. And hopefully you can see what is at the bottom here. It is about augmenting human capability. So that can be in different ways. And I believe that...
Yeah, okay. What I would like to do is ask a few questions to of you. And hopefully you're seeing my screen now. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So there are 4 questions. How many tools are you using? What are you using the tools for? And think about it in your sort of getting your work done. You don't have to mention Microsoft Office and things like that, because that's more or less common ground. But other kinds of tools in your daily work, what are you using them for? What tools are helping you, and where would you benefit from finding better tools? We'll get back to this, but we'll again use a simple Google form, and it's in the chat. There's a link in the chat, and we'd like to take a couple of minutes just to go in there and ask you to answer those questions, and then we'll just look at that and use that in the discussion afterwards and see. So if you please would jump over to that link and try and fill in those questions.
May I ask, you say where would you benefit? Are you asking in what type of work, or?
Yeah, Arne, you wrote the question, but I assume it's where, is there an area where you would really like to find some better tools or some new tools?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and where in your work life would you benefit from finding better tools?
Okay. Mm.
Couple of minutes, and then we'll get back. As you are filling out this, you can perhaps see how it works. It automatically fills out in real time. You can watch it. On some of the previous webinars, we had also made some processing of the input and had a graph that dynamically developed as people were inputting these things. It's something that not everybody has thought of, that it actually works this way, but a very neat thing, and something that is very useful, that we will get back to a little bit later on.
Can you make column D wider, please?
I can. I was just wondering if what I should do was instead to make it like that, and then we'll make a PDF of this and attach it to whatever we send out to you. So we have a few of them here. Obviously, this reflects we're into different domains here, but collaboration, those things that we, presentation, visualization, progress, time management, personal life. Yeah, wouldn't we all like to have a handle on that? Future projections, story mapping synced with Azure DevOps. We're working on that right now, so that's of course nice. Stories is difficult in DevOps. Also, could a tool help organize, associate notes, meetings, improve collaboration, risk management? Don't know, facilitation, engagement, and no one. It seems to be quiet down now. There's one more. That's fine. Thanks a lot. I think it's as much as we can expect, and then you've given us some good input. We can see where everybody is at, and you've also once again experienced how a very simple tool can actually fulfill a need here and now, and this is what we're homing in on a little bit later. So Arne, I think the next is yours then.
Yes, so I will continue, and what we may want to add to this is that it didn't take very long time to create this form. Different types of tools I'm going to talk about now, and when we look at tools, we see that sometimes low-tech tools help us a lot, and sometimes high-tech tools help us a lot, and our experience tells us that high-tech tools can be used to increase quality and to increase productivity. Also, we can use some high-tech tools to visualize things. And then low-tech tools, in our experience, are preferably used to stimulate collaboration and creativity, and to promote interaction, and also to visualize things. And then I thought it was fun to get a couple of pictures of tools. And what Kurt provided was the left one, and what I provided were the Finnish bowl section. I was at the museum in Helsinki last summer, and some of the pictures I took myself. And you see that when you blow glass, you have a tool where you put a lump of glass and then you blow into it. And then in order to shape the vase, you put it into this wooden or metallic mold. And then afterwards you get it, and you see the transparent vase with a top on it. That's before they cut the top, and then you have the famous alto vase. When we think about different tools, we have tried to differentiate and divide into a couple of different categories: development tools, planning tools, management. It could be project management tools, as it says here, or product management tools, collaboration tools, and communication tools. What you see here are some illustrations of those things, and I will elaborate a little on each of these 5 categories and then summarize a little on the 3 top ones before I go into the last 2 ones. So development tools is to make development tasks easier or faster. And Kurt was mentioning a lot of software development tools, and here is a picture I found on the internet, many of them. And then I thought it was interesting to try to find some example of tools for development of products that were not software tools, and especially automated testing. And these 2 images are from the IKEA website, and they even have a digital museum of IKEA, and they have created machines to test the endurance of chairs, and also what happens if you put something with a weight like a human onto a bed several times, but they couldn't find any humans to volunteer getting in and out of a bed hundreds of times a day. So they invented a machine for this automated testing. So development tools, including testing tools, of course. Planning tools, high-tech, low-tech. These images are all copied from the AgileLeanHouse website, both low-tech and high-tech planning tools to make planning easier, faster, and also more transparent. Project or product management tools is to support management and control of projects, product development, and similar. And this is also from the AgileLeanHouse tool Agemba, where we show this is very similar to a sprint backlog. What are the things that are ongoing in the current iteration? What is done, what is ongoing, and what is remaining? That is, of course, for planning purposes, and then also for follow-up and monitoring. So the summary of this is that in order to support product management and development, many times those tools are high-tech and thus software tools. And before you decide or when you want to choose, what are things to consider? Well, there are 2 things according to us: ease of use and what we call wag the dog. And the idiom, the tail wagging the dog, is what we want to avoid. We want to avoid the tool telling us how to behave, rather select tools that we can get support from. What is it that we want to support? What is hard in what we're doing? And what tools will help us to ease that pain? Ease of use, of course. So therefore, test different alternative tools for ease of use in your context. It's really hard to say that this is always going to be ease of use in every situation. I was thinking and making a thought experiment with myself before, and I was thinking, how many different pairs of scissors do I have in my home? And I don't know, but at least 10 different. And some of them are for one purpose, others are for other purposes. If I also go into my tool shed and look for similar things to cut branches of bushes and stuff like that, I probably could count to 20. So they have different purpose and they can be used in different contexts. So context is king as many times. Collaboration tools to support collaboration within a team and between a team and the outside, sometimes between different teams as well. What you see here is an illustration of some kind of iteration board, task board, you name it, what you want to call it. You see items that are not started, what is ready for test, what is done, something about an iteration goal, maybe a burn down chart to show us what is our progress during the iteration. Things that appear during the iteration which was unplanned, that if we visualize that, we can use that observation for improvement in the future. What is hard right now? What is stopping us? What are the impediments, blockers, problems, etc.? And then I wanted to show collaboration tools outside of the context of product development as well. And this traffic light, I believe that is from Oslo in Norway. It's used for visualizing when I can walk or when I should not walk, because this is collaboration in traffic. Then communication tools, tools to support communication in order to make it easier or more effective. And the megaphone is, of course, an example of tool to support communication. Communication tools, good to think about. And with that, I believe I will stop sharing and ask Kurt to take over and continue.
I wanted to talk a little bit about what we could call the fatal attraction of tools, and of course, sometimes tools actually get in our way in different. Arne said that earlier on, and especially both Arne and I, we're Scrum trainers, and a lot of our colleagues are sort of fiercely against automatic tools. Post-its are what you are supposed to use. So automatic tools, and there is of course something about it. When you have a tool that requires a certain amount of your mental bandwidth just to operate it, it can restrict your creativity. Now, I have the task in our company of sending out newsletters, and every time I get back to MailChimp, my creativity is strongly restricted, because how does this damn thing work? I mean, and I can't remember, and it's probably changed since last time. So tools can get in your way. You're depending on them, and if the tool itself consumes a serious amount of your mental bandwidth, you are in trouble, really. Tools have to be enabling constraints. That is something that helps us and supports us in what we're doing. You could talk about, it's a little bit like when children are learning how to bicycle. You put on these supporting wheels that keep them out of harm's way. And really, the best tools are those that are not just there when we need them. And they don't get in our way in different ways. Some tools I've heard quoted, if you want to use this, you've got to employ a PhD to configure it, because this is a full-time job, and it's definitely, there are a few things, especially in the IT world, that are renowned for being exceedingly difficult, unnecessarily difficult. One of them is configuring the mail client in Unix. Another one is the Apache web server, the redirection scheme there. This is really hardcore stuff, and those tools, people avoid them. If they by all means can avoid them, they do. So you don't want that. You also sometimes have people who misuse the tools. Occasionally, when you introduce Agile, you train Scrum Masters, and you have a sort of semi-fascistic person getting into a Scrum Master position, and he can use the tool to beat the others over their heads with and sort of enforce things. This is what we have to do. This is the way it has to be used. And then it gets in the way of the spirit of the Agile implementation. The Agile implementation was supposed to give psychological safety, so that we are volunteering our insight and our ideas, and not be forced by a tool. So you, as Arne said before, you should really be able to use the tool in a way that doesn't limit you too much. There are constraints, but they should be enabling. There's a certain psychology around tools. It's also been seen several times that people get so preoccupied with the tool that, okay, we didn't do much, but actually the tool worked wonderfully. So we've got an awful lot of things done in the tool, but not real work that actually supported the benefits of our customers. Sometimes you just get too preoccupied with the perfection of the tool, or I've had team members who used a tool for making a burn down chart. That's a good idea, but they wanted a perfect burn down chart, which is a straight line, and the straight line contains absolutely no information. So sometimes you ruin your best efforts. Sometimes you customize and customize and customize so that you have tied yourself into knots that you cannot really change, because you've configured the tool in such a customized way that it's very, very hard to get out of, or even to upgrade sometimes. So find the right balance of support, and be sure to, whatever team it is that has to work with this tool, make sure that they are involved in it. Over the last year or so, I've been involved a couple of places where they have, I would say, in a misunderstood attempt to help, they've appointed someone to be in charge of tools, and then obviously this becomes this person's most important thing, to get everybody to more or less spend as much time on the tool as possible, because that's his job. And then it's not balanced anymore. It's not that the team has to be involved in it, and we are homing towards an argument that we'll come to in a moment about the team, that those people that use the tool should, by and large, be able to control it themselves and manage it themselves. That's the optimal solution. We'll talk about Toyota in a moment. There are some cognitive biases, and in the previous webinars, we've talked about cognitive biases in other contexts, but they're here as well. There's a definite one here, the sunken cost fallacy. So I don't know how often I've heard, but now we've invested in this tool, so clearly we have to use it. So we've spent so much money and training effort, and people have learned to do it, and they've expended blood, sweat, and tears. So now, damn it, we have to use it, right? So, and that's the sunken cost fallacy. Actually, the past should not really influence what we do in the future in this way. It's the costs are sunk. We have sunk them. Another one, conservative bias. When our needs change, we unfortunately have a conservative bias, more or less all of us. We don't change enough based on the new evidence. We don't change our opinions, and we also don't change the use of our tools. We stick with it, although it may not be appropriate anymore. We don't change the use of it, and we don't retool as much as we should. We go a little bit, but not enough. That's the conservative bias. Substitution bias. That's the substitution bias is when we get a complex question, and instead of answering that, we answer a simpler one. And quite often, well, we didn't really solve the problem, but we made the tool work. And then people actually think they've done their job. Over all of this, of course, we have probably a typical male bias, and to be over enthusiastic about tools. In the US, the joke is that how every Saturday they're down at the hardware store, wondering about all those tools that they might go out and buy. And I have to admit there is some truth in that also here on in these shores. So all the tools we could imagine we could do, and it's so easy to get preoccupied with that. Wouldn't it be fun if we could do that as well? There we have to try and help ourselves be realistic about it. And especially if you use Scrum, if you have the role of the Scrum Master has to sort of take a little bit distant view of this and try and help his team not to get too preoccupied with the tools. But there are some good reasons for using tools. Let's just recap a few of them. Now, obviously, remote work. I'm absolutely on the same page with the people who say that nothing beats Post-its and a team in front of a whiteboard, or that's maximum communication bandwidth. It doesn't get any better than that. But if we are remote, like we are tonight, for example, we have to use tools. We can't. This morning, I had a coaching session with a non-profit organization, which I decided to do what I call a cappella, and that is without tools, apart from a pen and a piece of paper. And it was actually, I mean, it was really good. It was as fast as I've ever done it. It was as interactive as I've ever achieved to do it, and nothing beats that. But we don't have that situation all the time. And after the COVID crisis here, for various other good reasons, we're going to live with remote work. Now the energy prices have doubled. I got a shock today. It filled my car with diesel, and it's doubled here in the last 2 weeks, more or less. Well, a little bit more than that. But anyway, there's very, very good reasons for not just having people travel all over the place to meet, if we can solve it. If we can solve it, but we need to up our game with the electronic tools. The tools we use to collaborate with, whether it's for development or test or communication or collaboration, as Arne talked about, we need to improve our game here, because it's hard to get to the same level. And remote work needs more structure. We cannot rely on exactly the same ways of communicating as we do face to face, because at the moment I only see tiny little pictures of you, and I can't see if anyone is having sort of a slight change of expression, and I need to accommodate that or react to it. I just cannot see it. So then we need more structure, and we need the structure to be unobtrusive, to be enabling constraints instead of limiting constraints. Transparency. Sometimes you have to produce multiple artifacts because people don't understand the same way. In a moment, I'll show you one of my favorite tools, and our resident company cynic may introduce that maybe I'm obsessed with this tool, and that's very possible. We all have those biases. But I know for sure that particular tool doesn't really speak to our chairman in the company. He just doesn't like it. So sometimes you just have to vary your communication. An artifact, a graph, whatever it is, also is a communication, and you have to adapt to your audience sometimes. And transparency is at the core of everything. Those of you who have sat through either Ken Swaber's original Scrum education, where they talk about empirical process control, there's 3 pillars to that. It starts with transparency. If it's not transparent, if you can't see things, can't see the truth, you can't do anything. Transparency is the first one. Inspection is the second one. You have to look at it, otherwise it doesn't help you. And then finally, adaptation. You have to have the mandate to change, otherwise also don't get any benefit, but it all starts with transparency. For example, in our office, we have now a huge monitor. They have come down in price and cost very, very little for an 85-inch monitor. And everybody can see it now. This changes the whole game. A 4K monitor in 85-inch size can have an awful lot of information, present an awful lot of things that we couldn't a couple of years ago, not reasonably priced at least. So think of that, what you can do. Actually, a modern, and again, here's a standard commodity, a TV, and if you buy last year's model, they're really cheap. And they have a browser built in, and you can display your dashboard up there. That's all you need. This is, again, a simple tool that you can control. It's just a TV, and you can have a lot of transparency for very little effort. Then I would claim that there is a white spot on the map, the product owner and his communication with stakeholders. He doesn't get much help. This is one of our visions, is to try and help the poor product owner with some of his work. Now, you might argue a team, well, okay, they can sit together. If they can sit together, they don't need much tooling, really. Not in this area of collaboration, because they're there, they have whiteboards, they have stickies and so on. But the product owner, he can't get all his stakeholders into the same room every day. He has to rely on some remote communication, how to get them involved. That's one that I'd like to promote, the idea that we pay more attention to. And then what we call Kaizen AI, there's a big interest in AI in terms of artificial intelligence. And we normally think about big data, enormous systems, enormous amount of data collection, enormous amount of learning of a system before they can do anything. But actually, the fact is that sometimes simple algorithms that just help us a little bit can do an awful lot of good. And that's why we call it Kaizen AI. Kaizen is the Japanese term for constant improvement. So just little things that you can get, simple supportive tools, advice, recommendations. Have you thought about that? Visual help for the product owner, double checking for complexity, etc. Here's one that we presented. I just want to repeat it. Here's a way of just doing in Google Sheets a graph that shows every bubble here is a backlog item. The size of them is the estimated workload, the effort. They have been estimated for both effort and value. And we've pulled that out of our system. We have an API that can deliver this data, pulled it into a spreadsheet, just one simple command, and it's in there, and a little transformation. And here we have a presentation of all the backlog items with a proposed, it's not done this way, but it's a proposal for the product owner of how to prioritize. On the x-axis, we have the relative return on investment. So the further out to the right, the more relative valuable they are compared to the cost. And up the y-axis, we have the uncertainty, normalized to the biggest one, which is item 5 up here, where that's the most uncertain thing. And most of the recommendations we find is that you start with, on the blue corner, the high value, high risk ones, and then you move through the green area to the yellow, the orange, and maybe you never get to the red one, but this would be your recommended way. Now, the thing is that this information here, without a support tool like this, a very primitive support tool, the product owner really cannot keep it in his head. You have to be a trained statistician to keep those things in your head and make sense of it. Therefore, we need visualizations. Not that I'm going to do it as a product owner exactly like this. I don't have to, but I get a suggestion. This is a what we call a Kaizen AI solution. here we have the tools we can prioritize, and over to the left, we have a few of those backlog items that are must-haves, and I have to think about those too as well, of course, as the product owner. But it's a little supportive tool that gives me a recommendation. And a similar one here is where we have mapped the estimate of uncertainty with the estimate of complexity. These are two different kinds of estimates. And what we're trying to do here is to find those that are unreasonable or potential outliers that do not, then there would normally be a correlation. But if there are some who are too far away, maybe we need to discuss it with the team. Have we forgotten something? And yet again, it's a help to avoid the disasters, like Arne was saying, forgetting his ironing device with power on. So there are these little tools to continue with. Let's just talk a little bit about this Japanese, or the Toyota, the karakuri. Karakuri is really a Japanese term for a mechanical doll. There are some antique mechanical wooden dolls that you see to the right. And what Toyota now has is a huge initiative where people directly involved in the work are encouraged to come up with their own devices. So out in the production environment, they are encouraged to come up with something that will help them increase productivity, quality, and safety. They only use mechanical things, levers, pulleys, counterweights, magnets, and gravity, springs perhaps, no computers, no hydraulics. And the reason for it, they ask, which tools can you master in your work? With the time I have available, what can I do that I can maintain and keep working? And so it's a sort of an interesting thing these days that here's one of the premier companies of the world moving in a direction and say, well, actually, we prefer a mechanical solution to a computerized solution. So there's a PDF file that we will give you to read, because this is a long story. But look for simple tools that can speed things up. We just saw that. We saw the Google Sheet, what you can do with simple tools. Now, this is actually exactly why I did it. This did not take any time from our development team. I can do it myself with my primitive skills in this area. And I don't have to get other people involved in it. So there are simple tools you can look at searching files, Notepad++ for text files, spreadsheet, Google Forms. We saw this early on this evening. You can quickly get some responses. Think about that if you're a product owner. Are there things that you would like to send out to a lot of stakeholders that you can't really get into to dialogue with them, but maybe you could get them to do this? I think we're running out of time. I've talked too much here. We have also a collaboration using Google Slides that you could pull on. Here are some examples. These Karakuri Kaizen examples. The very simple one is okay, is the fan on or not? There's just a few plastic strings put on it, and apparently this fan is on. Yeah, and you can see that from a distance. Another one that they came up with is a lever, where you take a tool off the lever, and when you take it off, it's because of counterweights, the magnets dip into the box with screws. And when you put the tool back, and when you take the tool to use it again, it comes up with 2 screws for you. So you are constantly using the energy and the weight of the operator or the movement you have already to do that. So these things are is what is really in the Karakuri concept, is to use the simple things that you do anyway to make your job easier. With knowledge work, of course, we have all these things we saw before. So we can appreciate that, and we can do that. I think we should perhaps pause here on and see if we have some discussion before we end up. This was
yes, and what we meant by discussion was to learn a little about your thoughts about this. So here are a couple of things that we are interested in hearing your view on. So I'll show that on my screen. First of all, what do you get out of this? And if you want to elaborate a little on what have you observed with regards to tools, that can be tool selection, tool usage, and other things. Kurt mentioned, for example, that sometimes we keep on using a certain tool, even though we know it doesn't really support what we're supposed to do. But for different reasons, we have a hard time deciding to select another one or choose another one. It could be the sunken cost fallacy. It could be other fallacies as well. So please, anyone, and feel free to use the tool in Zoom to raise your hand and indicate that you want to say something, and I will stop sharing. And any immediate reactions or comments or questions from any of you?
Hi, yes, I have a question.
Yes.
Often it's very easy within the team itself to recognize when a tool that has been procured isn't really working well, or it's slow and difficult to use. It's kind of eating up more time than it's helping. What's a good approach to convincing the people who actually procured the tool that it's not delivering the benefit that they may have hoped?
So one of the things that I try to do, I try to be proactive, and I try to involve those who are actually going to use a tool in the selection. And I try to be very clear and try to kind of get a shared understanding and agreement on what is the problem that we want this tool to solve. In what way will it make it easier for us? What is the purpose of selecting a tool? And if you're able to be proactive, then it's easier, of course, but sometimes we're not. So we end up in the situation that you are mentioning. And if we know why we want the tool, then of course it is good to show if it's helping us or not to become more productive, or if it's a time thief that actually pulls away time that we could use for better things to produce things. So in organizations where you are open to admit your mistakes and reconsidering your decisions, then this is welcome, of course. So it's easy to say, but it's also unfortunately a matter of the culture in a company as well. I mean, if you impose something on people, you're probably not as likely to reconsider than if you were actually asking people to help you select it from the beginning, because we all know that we can make mistakes. We honestly believed it would help us, and we selected it, and it turned out it doesn't help us. So those are a couple of immediate thoughts from my side. What about you, Kurt?
A couple of simple experiences really is that, like with any other, as we typically call impediments that gets in our way, make it visible. I had a couple of instances where a team, it was not really the tool, but there was other things like a constant call for other meetings that the team had to attend to, and they blew their plan over and over. And we started recording it, and we simply made it visible that we spent this much time on. So people said, "Why didn't you make more this sprint? Why such a poor result?" Well, look at this. We actually spent this much, that much. So what I've done sometimes as a Scrum Master is I've without trying to put extra load on the team, but I've recorded whenever there was something. Oh, the team said, now we wasted another half an hour on this, or now and then make it visible, and make sure people see the data of it, that this is actually what it does. Again, another area to come from is, another angle to come from is, but that's hard to beat, but because typically an IT department in a larger company is extremely focused on standardization, because they want to reduce cost of ownership on that. But actually, the numbers don't always add up. It ends up being more expensive. So you have to give it to them in terms of numbers.
Well, thank you very much, both. That was really, really helpful.
So
anyone else with a comment or a question or a thought?
I find it sort of difficult to understand why people have a lack of interest in learning the tools, because once you start using a tool, people expect it to be sort of obvious. It should be like a toy, right? And it shouldn't require any effort at all. And that to me is really strange. This lack of interest, and I found out that it's a profession that is quite profitable, and that is actually just going around and helping people create reports in Excel. You can do that as a living. I now share offices with several people that run around and help people use Excel. That's what they do. And there's no wizardry. It's just being able to use the tools.
Well, so maybe my assumption was wrong. I thought actually I was presenting something that was simple to do, the Karakuri way of using Excel. Maybe I'm mistaken here, but I would be interested if anybody has the same. Maybe you haven't heard about Karakuri before, but anybody come across some simple tools that made a big difference for you? All of a sudden, a simple thing that changed a lot for you. Any idea? Any comments on that?
And preferably something that surprised you as well. That could be a thing to reflect upon. Have we been in those situations? ERP tools I agree with that. That's a horror example, and that is posted in the chat. So we have 2 more minutes of our official time together. So I'm going to show you the last couple of slides and also let you know about what you can expect if you want to attend a meetup in 2 weeks as well. So here, let us just show you who gave you all of this. AgileLeanHouse is the company, and we say that we support your agile journey. Agile Lean Leadership courses, Agemba, the tool, consultancy, and other tools. And consultancy, coaching, mentoring, on-site training. And here are the faces of our current coaches. We are looking for more, as always. And Agemba, the tool that you have seen a couple of illustrations from, a tool that can help you to increase transparency, collaboration, and predictability. And then in 2 weeks, on Wednesday, March 23 at 7 p.m. CET, the next free webinar, Value and Effort Estimation, an invitation to get involved. And that gives you an excellent opportunity to try out the last release of Cool Estimation, a tool as well. Anything that you would like to add?
I would just like to finally just show a screen again and give you an idea of what you can expect, so that we end up in the traditional cliffhanger. We have this new tool that we have been focusing on during the Corona time, when we couldn't do all the things we wanted to do, and then at least we could do this. And I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes.
And so what's going on here is that this is a totally new tool that we are going to present in detail in 2 weeks' time. And it's called Cool Estimation. It's part of the Cool Apps family. We'll talk a little bit about the technology. So it's also next time. So we're going to advertise this to also people of a more development persuasion. You can have a number of estimations in it, and you can have value estimation, effort estimation, and cost estimation. For each estimation, you can add some stories and some uses, and of course, it's this is a sort of a minimal viable product we're going to show you, but in this case here, when I enter a session of estimation, you can see we have estimation poker cards, and they can go in here, and if I'm a participant, I can pull another screen over here, and you can see I'm now a participant. I can actually vote. The other one was the facilitator. I can see who is here, and I can see what they vote. And that's what we're going to go through in detail. How can that be used? And especially, we are focusing on the product owner and his or her work with the stakeholders, which we think is a bit of a white spot on the map. And so here's an opportunity for product owners to use this together with their stakeholders and get them to express their opinion on the value of the items we're discussing. That's what Cool Estimation is about in the first version. And then we are looking for people who would like to be involved one way or another, and we're going to present more about that in 2 weeks' time. So apart from that, I think I am done. There's lots more we could talk about, but certainly I thank everybody for showing up and having the patience to stay most of the time. Thanks a lot. And we'll hang around a little while if anybody wants to talk more, but the official program is hereby concluded. Can we say that, Arne?